2019 Manistee City Planning Commission. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please take roll.
Commissioner Slawinski. Commissioner Szymanski. Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Commissioner Weiner.
Here.
Commissioner McBride.
Here.
Commissioner Yoder.
Here.
Chair Whitliff.
Here. Thank you. Approval of agenda. At this time, the Planning Commission can take action to approve the July 11th, 2019 meeting agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Motion by Shelley, second by Roger. Any discussion? None? Please take roll.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Weiner.
Yes.
Commissioner McBride.
Yes.
Commissioner Yoder.
Yes.
Chair Whitliff.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Approval of minutes. At this time, the Planning Commission can take action to approve the June 6th, 2019 meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes as.
Motion by Marlene, second
I'll second.
by Shelley. Any discussion? None? Please take roll.
Commissioner Thomas.
Yes.
Commissioner Weiner.
Yes.
Commissioner McBride.
Yes.
Commissioner Yoder.
Yes.
Chair Whitliff.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. Public hearings, we have none.
No.
Public comment on agenda-related items. If there's anyone in the audience that would like to make a comment on the agenda, please approach the podium. Name and address, please.
Sean Middleton, 558 First Street. I guess, good evening, Commissioners. I'm here on, related to, I guess, not as the engineer of record, but as a personal property owner. I live on First Street, and this is related to your item, gotta find it, old business, FEMA maps report, and then parentheses says waterfront yards. And I am a landowner, again, at 558 First Street, and I have a piece of property that sits between First Street and a strip of city-owned property, and then the river channel just above the river walk. So I'm not actually a waterfront property, but I'm adjacent to the city, which is the waterfront property. Because of that, it kind of is one of the reasons I'm in, because it kind of complicates things a little bit, I think. I recently applied to do a deck extension in the back of my house to come out a little bit farther. And as part of that process, the question came up regarding waterfront setbacks. So I have a rear yard setback that's 10 feet, but there's also a waterfront setback within the city that for most of the city is 20 feet, but in R1, it's 100 feet. And that 100 feet from the ordinary high water mark came to basically the limits of where I was starting to put in my deck. All the properties to the west of me, the homes are less than 100 feet. They're probably between 90 and 60 feet off the ordinary high water mark. So the one question was, does it apply, the waterfront setback apply to a property that's not on the waterfront? And I think that question went to the ZBA, and there's a discussion on it. I'm obviously of the opinion I don't think it does, because I don't really have any control over that, but I know that's a question that's going to be in front of you. With regards to that, the strip of land is about 60 feet from the city property. There's a section 505A, it talks about where the waterfront setback applies, and it mentions specifically if you abut the water. And based on that, that's where I thought it'd be clear on whether or not that would apply to my project. But regardless of how it turns out, if it's the 10-foot or the 100-foot, if I am considered a property that the waterfront setback applies to, I would like to also some consideration be given for adjusting that setback. Because there's no other properties on the entire channel that have more than a 20-foot setback. There's only 6 homes that are in the R1 that have this 100-foot setback requirement. and the majority of that is actually city property. So those are kind of the main things. I am familiar with the floodplain process, and I know that's kind of gonna be woven into this discussion. And I thought, just for frame of reference, the elevation that's proposed in the floodplain maps behind, at least behind my home, is 583, NAVD 88. That elevation is approximately about 7/10 to a foot above what the water surface is today. So to give you a sense, if you can picture where the water is today, you're probably coming in a couple feet up that bank, and that's where that floodplain line roughly would be today. There's erosion, things change, but basically that intersection point would be just a couple feet outside of the current water edge, just as a frame of reference. And I think that's really all. I just wanted to make that point, and I'd be happy to take questions when you're on that line item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Well, first, sir, don't we have to determine if it's a water setback is part of your property? You're not sure if it is or not, right?
I think the question, the big question that was in front of the planning group was, do waterfront setbacks apply to more than just the property that abuts?
The waterfront setbacks apply to more than a property that it applies.
That just abuts the water. So just in my case, I have the city property.
Right, between you and the water.
Yep, and there's 60 feet.
Right.
And then I have my property.
Right.
And so if it's 100 feet, 40 feet comes onto mine. So that was, where I read it, it wouldn't apply, but there was also some discussion that it could apply. And maybe the intent was that it didn't matter how many properties, it could be 10 properties in there, and it would apply to all of them. And so that's one of the questions I think that's out
I
there.
think that's
still.
illegal. Okay, all
Did
right.
that help?
Yeah, thank you for,
Thank you.
I never thought of it.
Our
Let's see.
question too.
Is it
Anyone else?
water and property?
Didn't we talk about that last meeting?
Yeah, you guys had asked if we would, table it until, the FEMA maps came out. We have the FEMA maps, in your packet. And we had planned on discussing it at that time.
It's the third agenda item on old business. We'll eventually get to that.
Okay, we'll get to that tonight.
Kyle, you're in charge? No Rob?
Nope, not tonight.
Oh, boy. You can do it.
New business, site plan size requirements. And I will turn that over to staff.
Definitely. So currently on the different site plans for applications regarding commercial, industrial, and large projects, the requirement states an 11-inch by 17-inch size plan is required. During this special use permit application process we're currently in for other things, it's been difficult to read some of these smaller printed documents. Therefore, it's coming before you tonight to recommend and vote upon changing the site plan size from not 11 by 17, but to full-size plans. Full-size plans, I think, are 2 foot by 3 foot or something of the sort. They're large enough to gather around and clearly define certain things that the requirements dictate. So I bring it to you and recommend that we change the site plans, or the site plan size requirements from 11 by 17 to full-size plans, so.
Don't even have a cough drop. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns about that?
Discussion on any thoughts?
Makes sense. I mean, if you can't read the small print.
Well, when I started, they used to be kind of like full-size, rolled up, remember?
Yeah.
Not that long ago. I'm not sure why they went to the smaller,
Probably save paper or something.
maybe.
Yeah, okay. Do you need a motion to that effect and everything?
Yeah,
Pam, any thoughts?
No, I agree, they should be full-size.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you designate what you mean though by full-size?
full-size, plan size drawings, I think, are 24 by 36, yeah.
That's the standard like blueprint size, kind of?
Yeah.
We could specify?
Put that in the
Oh, definitely. I will, for full-size plans, I'll make it clear as to what the exact requirements are with site.
Put that in the motion. So if there's a motion,
I'll make a motion to that effect.
okay,
So-
with the added 24 inch by 36 inch.
But I
Excuse
think
me.
he was gonna find out what the full-size plan really size is.
Well,
But yeah, I'd recommend they move to full size.
okay. Any second?
I'll second.
Second by Shelley. Any other discussions?
I mean, help things along.
None? Please take roll.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Weiner?
Yes.
Commissioner McBride?
Yes.
Commissioner Yoder?
Yes.
Chair Whitliff?
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. Home business registration request. Again, I'll turn that over to staff.
Okay, I'll read the memo, so we're all on the same page as to what's happening. An application for a home-based business has been received in the R2 medium density residential district. Applicant has received certification from the county clerk and now needs city approval to effectively issue the home-based business permit. Upon planning and zoning review, it's been determined that most of all the regulations and conditions are met for approval, though further clarification is needed to solidify the type of disposal requirements for said business. The outlining guide from the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy has defined disposal methods that are prohibited and showcased in the following pages. A neighbor of proposed home business has previously made a formal complaint which cites noise and fumes and as a problem of concern showcased in correspondence. The applicant's situation is such that both him and his partner need to work to support their disabled son. This home-based business would greatly help that situation. Applicant is very workable to adhering to the ordinance and stipulating any parameters present by commission to comply. The planning department recommends that the planning commission votes to either approve or deny this request, though if considering approval, the following conditions should be taken into consideration. The physical working hours of the operation between a certain time, 9 and 5 for noise purposes, proper ventilation of structure to account for noxious odor emittance, and lastly, proper disposal of materials pursuant of the Eagle guidelines. The applicant's both the applicant and the complainant are here, so to answer any questions. In the following pages, you will see where in the city this property is located. It's in the R2 district, located where the red arrow is on that small map. This in front of us now is the home occupation application with the initial rundown of the specificities of the different information that was required. What we have here is the business registration application that was paid for and approved by the county clerk here. So what comes into question with the home occupation are the following things for approval. This is defined as a minor home occupation, meaning that they need a zoning permit and things like that. The different stipulations include shall be conducted entirely within enclosed structures and shall be limited to the personal residence of the person engaging in the home occupation. The home occupation shall be an accessory use to the residential use. The activities and carrying on of the home occupation shall be operated in a manner that other residents of the area under normal circumstances would not be aware of the existence of this home occupation. With the exception of material purchase over the counter, including household cleaning products, lawn care products, operation of photocopy machines, paint, printing, arts and crafts supplies, or heating fuel, the home occupation shall not involve the following: generation of any hazardous waste as defined by the Hazardous Waste Management Act, or use of materials which are used in such quantity or otherwise required to be registered in the Code of Federal Regulations. Not more than one automobile associated with the home occupation may be parked on the street. Only the inhabitants of the residence, plus not more than one non-resident, shall be an employee of the home occupation. And also, lastly, no additional rooms or accessory structures may be added to the dwelling to accommodate for this said home occupation. Those are the principles for this ruling, if you will. We've initially gone over it, and everything was okay except C and D, which shall be operated in a manner that other residents of the area under normal circumstances would not be aware, and then the hazardous materials as to how they were going to be disposed. So that being said, Eagle has outlined different used oil and things that cannot be disposed in different places, and outlines where they can be disposed as showcased in this overview here. So they cannot be dumped down drains, disposed of in landfills, burned in municipal solid waste incinerators, or used as dust control or weed control. Used oils as defined by the guidelines are including used motor oil, used hydraulic oil, used transmission and brake fluids, metalworking materials, spent quench oils, spent gear oils, non-PCB oils, CFC contaminated oil water mixtures, and oil drippings from metal shavings. So this guideline this is a letter from one of the residents showcasing that noise and fumes are a concern. So like I said earlier, the Planning Commission or the Planning Department recommends that this is seriously considered for approval, that hours of working operation are considered, proper ventilation of structures considered, and the disposal of the materials as pursuant of the Eagle guidelines is strongly considered. And like I said, both the applicant and the neighbor are here if there are any questions or concerns that might be addressed properly by those parties.
Question, who would police the ventilation in the odor, excuse me?
That would be on the zoning administrator, I feel like, at that point, pursuant of their land use permit application with a stipulation, if it was to be ventilated a certain way, that I believe the zoning administrator myself would go and inspect it, and on a properly working day to consider the ventilation, though that's my assumption. I'm not exactly sure who would police it.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think it's either you or Nancy. I think Nancy goes and checks them out.
Yeah.
No.
And then the hours of physical working operation are 9 to 5, so is that 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.?
Yeah, I should have made that more clear, though. In regard to physical working, I guess we should define that as working on the small engine motors and things like that, compared to doing clerical work or something from before or after those hours.
Yeah, right.
And do we, with these guidelines, do we set days of operation? Is it 5 days a week, or is it 7 days a week, or 6 days a week? So,
I think we should consider the people around the neighborhood in the sense of if we should consider that. I don't know if it's a concern, or if it's Monday through Friday in regard to normal working days of other businesses, in regard to other neighbors using small engines in the first place for cutting lawns or snow blowing or the noise. That's something to consider, though. I don't have a recommendation on that. I mean, like I said earlier, the applicant is in need of this job to help support the family, and I'm not sure that a Monday through Friday job wouldn't be unnecessary for this.
I just wanted to throw that out there, so.
Though I do want to stress that fumes are a serious concern in the sense of ventilation, that if fumes are drifting to other properties around, it can be considered a hazardous situation and noxious for not only humans but animals, and it's something to highly consider.
Yeah.
You've addressed stipulations that there won't be a bunch of junk things stacking up, waiting to be worked on, or?
Okay, that's a good one. I guess great question in the sense of if someone is dropping off a project, if you will, to be in a enclosed area. Is that what you're getting at? That they're not, the engine or the small engine projects aren't
I don't
lit?
want to drive by and look at a junkyard,
Right.
stuff stacked up.
That could be a stipulation of granting it as well, is that, that the business be kept completely contained within the building, which I believe is in the code that it has to be, so, but you could have, with granting it, there could be other stipulations added to it than what we've recommended.
So stipulation A already in the ordinance section 1847 for minor home occupations, it states, the home occupation shall be conducted entirely within enclosed structures and shall be limited to the personal residence of the person engaging in said home occupation. So I personally think that conducting the business would have to be in that enclosed structure.
Now, obviously, as he, I
Go
didn't
ahead.
interrupt. Has he been doing this? Because the neighbors have been complaining about noise and fumes, so he must have been doing it, right?
It was a mistake on the county clerk to go ahead and issue what was issued in the sense of this conducting business certificate, and it should have gone through the city first, but we're now here at the point, so it has been, yes.
Oh, so he has been.
Yeah, once we became aware of the error, we requested that they stop working
Yeah.
until we can obviously have this meeting about the home business.
Mm-hmm.
It was, once it was brought to our attention that this was indeed going on, and then we found out that they had tried to do the right thing and apply for it through the county, but they should have went through the city. We notified them of their error, sat down with a meeting with them. They're very open to any kind of stipulations we wanted to put down, but we did put a stop to the work once we became aware of it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they just misdirected, but, and we've only got the one complaint, is from one neighbor?
Yes, and the neighbor is here today if you'd like to speak with them or ask them any kind of questions.
Well, he says noise and fumes, so that's pretty straightforward. Now, in the the couple know this complaint of noise and fumes?
I'm
They're
not
aware?
sure. I assume so, though I'm not sure.
Yeah, and if they're willing to work with you, like you say, if they're that copacetic, I mean, maybe they'll just work with the noise and fumes? Is that right, or not?
Well, the neighbors, it was when I said that we brought them in for a meeting, we were talking about the couple that had requested the land use permit for the residential. The neighbor, I did not speak with, so.
Oh.
You spoke with them though, right?
Yes. So, I guess it's on the planning commission now to figure out if we consider this home-based occupation as something that we should approve or deny. With home-based occupations, generally there are advertisements in the sense of small signs out front, which would be another potential project for the planning department and the applicant to work through. In the R2 district, there are some stauncher regulations than other districts for, including commercial and industrial, for example, that would have to be worked through though. So that's something to note as well.
Okay, does the commission want to ask questions to the applicant? And
What? Okay, I'll ask him, sure. Sure.
I take it that you are? Right, if you would, I'm sure there's some questions, so if you'd like to,
Can we both approach?
sure.
Sure.
Name and address, please, just for the record.
Hi, I'm Cassie Munsell. Our address is 3717th Street, Manistee, Michigan, 49660.
Mike Munsell, 371 7th Street, Manistee.
Do you have any?
Yes, my question would be
Bring 'em
then,
up.
my question would be to you, you've been operating this, obviously, for a couple weeks?
Yeah,
And they tell you to stop, right?
yeah,
And you were creating noise and fumes, correct? And the neighbors complained, correct?
correct.
Okay, are you willing to work with the neighbors or the zoning to eliminate the noise and the fumes?
What would the stipulation of the noise be?
So the neighbors wouldn't hear them. I mean, like the man said about working
So I can't
inside.
run my own lawnmower?
You can't run, what?
I can't run my own lawnmower?
No, you couldn't run your own lawnmower. Oh, you can run your own lawnmower, but like you say, you can't create a situation that's gonna bother the neighbors,
It
that's
could-
all I'm
it-
saying.
Our question is, what is considered, what would we would need specific, I guess, guidelines as to what's considered obnoxious noise and fumes.
Yeah.
As Kyle had mentioned before, that our son is disabled, one of the things he's not allowed to be around is fumes, and
Right.
fumes aren't a problem for him. So I guess what's obnoxious to one person may not be to somebody else. There's many obnoxious fumes and sounds in our neighborhood that we have personally had to close our windows to because of our children, and that's just life in a neighborhood. We didn't think anything of it other than, well, that's bothering us, close the window.
Yeah,
So I guess we're willing to work with anything. We just do need to know specifically
Well,
what those
yeah.
guidelines are. The noises that we're making are small engines, so that's the comment about the lawnmower, is they're no different than all the other noises that we're hearing around us.
Right.
On the odd chance that one is maybe backfiring and making a loud noise, we could say, oh, this one's too loud, this one we'll have to do on location and go to that person. And that's perfectly fine. He does on-call, house call things.
Oh.
We have been operating this for a few months because we thought we had gone through the
Yeah.
proper channels.
Mhm.
We did try to, and unfortunately, we're misinformed. So we're trying to go through the proper channels now. We're going to do a little backtracking. We want this to be correct, and we're willing to work with whatever stipulations. I work part-time. He had to quit his job, and this was our solution to how do we
This is
serve our son.
Income?
This, we're hoping it becomes income. I am a licensed veterinary technician, and Michigan law for LVTs is changing, that if I didn't go back to work, I could lose my license. So I had to go back to work because we're not done having children, and our son's health concerns were home a lot with him. He tried to go part-time, and his employer wouldn't let him. He ended up having to quit his job, and doing a home-based business was our option to have enough income. Our son is currently going through a medical review to find out if we even get to keep his disability and insurance, and so we're kind of hoping that this becomes a bigger thing. We do plan on not being here forever. This does, as the operation gets bigger, we are planning on purchasing a place out of town and hopefully having a storefront someday. This is our goal. This is kind of we're getting started. He's currently just started making enough to supplement our income.
Could I ask, does it make a difference? You're on 7th Street, you say, right?
Yes.
7th Street runs east and west.
Yes, it does.
And which end? Are you up on the west end or on the east end or in the middle or what?
We are like smack dab in the middle, almost between, is it Fairview Drive and Maple?
Okay.
That one-way street. We're about halfway between there. And the question of, are things going to be piled up in a mess? The garage which we're operating out of is actually located in our backyard, which is, we put up a 6-foot privacy fence when we bought the place a couple years ago. So everything is completely enclosed as far as you're not able to see anything driving past the house or walking past the house or anything.
Yeah.
So when you do the repairs on these engines, are you working out of a garage or a shed or?
Out of a garage.
Out of a garage.
Okay, all right.
I commend you for trying to go through the proper channels and that. What just type of things are you working on? Lawnmowers?
Basically lawnmowers, the occasional friend's vehicle, I might do something small.
Mostly electrical.
But mostly it's gonna be on a vehicle, it's mostly electrical things, but as far.
Don't tell us about vehicles, son.
Yeah, yeah.
On the small engines.
But
Engine.
I do,
We don't want to hear about no
oh,
vehicles.
my business is mostly 100% small engine.
Small engines, that's what.
Snow blowers, lawnmowers.
Snow blowers, lawnmowers, weed whips, chainsaws,
Sure.
Okay.
That's enough.
anything 2-stroke or 4-stroke.
I guess my question really is to staff, is there like a decibel level of noise that would be acceptable? Or if it went beyond that, then it becomes unacceptable?
It's a great question. I haven't seen decibel levels for this in the ordinance, so if it's,
And I guess how do you address the noise issue unless you have the garage shut, the door shut all the time so that noise is within, and then it's not good
I
for
mean,
you?
we could address the noise issue by making the hours a certain, less hours, I don't know.
He's currently, because like I said, I work part-time, so he's home with our children. He's currently only been doing 2 to 3 days, a couple hours at a time anyway. And a lot of that is even he goes and does jobs elsewhere because he does do house calls as well.
And then what about the ventilation? How is that addressed in terms of
Yeah.
fumes that, again, if you're enclosed, you've got to have something that's exhausting those fumes somewhere, because you can't be breathing them in either, so.
What's the current extent of the ventilation, I guess, is there windows there, or is it?
My main garage door and a side door.
Would it be unreasonable to request that you guys put a ventilation fan
I could put a
in the roof?
ventilation fan on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like on the roof of the
Yeah.
garage?
Yeah, the one that's wind turned or something like that.
But could this-
We need a permit for that, so we go about that for the right channel.
I will look into that for you.
Thank you.
We need it, but, yeah, I guess, you know, I could just talk, and it makes sense. I mean, they need it. If they're willing to work with the complaints, maybe they can eliminate the complaints. You know, that's,
Did the neighbor contact you prior to sending a written complaint? Never approached you about it or anything?
No, actually, our neighbor, we've actually been friends with in the almost 3 years that we've owned this property. And when we were starting this venture, we even asked him about it, and he encouraged us to pursue it, as well as our neighbor on the other side, who also doesn't have a problem with it. She as well encouraged us to pursue it. There was one mention, I believe, 2 months ago, jokingly, what we thought was jokingly, that, oh, that chainsaw's too loud, and then we never heard anything about it again, and
Well, chainsaws are loud.
Yeah.
chainsaws are loud, and we have a tree to cut down in our backyard, so chainsaws are normal anyway.
So do you think that your business needs to be open 5 days a week from 9 to 5 in the first place to constitute the income that you need to support your family?
It depends on what part of the business, because I work 3 days a week, and usually when I'm at work is when customers will bring him things, but he doesn't typically work on them, because we do have 2 small children at home that have very busy hands.
Interesting. So have you considered using the other 2 days as only working physical hours on you're using the other 2 days when you're back at home, is what you're saying, to do the work on the small?
And Fridays are my days off, and those are the days he's typically out and working on things. And it's usually for a few hours at a time, or if that.
And possibly a Saturday if I have a little bit of carryover.
I hate to ask, are there animals in the neighborhood? Do you get the dogs all barking or anything?
We have a dog. We
Oh.
have a blue tick coonhound, and so when he howls, of course that's loud. There's many, many things in the neighborhood that make our dog howl.
We're gonna stop those howl anymore.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, 'cause we got it one across the street. A car goes by, the dog barks. Not that I care, but, you know, some people are getting funny.
We haven't heard any dogs other than our own
Yeah.
with it, and when he howls, we put him in an enclosed room and remind him that voice is not okay. He's
Yeah,
super
right.
protective. Our son has sensory issues as well. I mean, all these complaints make sense. If anyone's dealing with them,
Yeah.
we are, because our son is sensitive to all of these things, and
Yeah, I
the
think
operation seems fine with him.
yeah, I'd say if they're willing to work, I'd say,
Yeah,
Let
and
'em work with
I
somebody.
think the limiting days, if you're trying to grow the business, if we're okay with if we're resolving the noise and fumes, I would like to see you be able to maintain your business hours, to grow your business, not to limit you in what you can do.
Our goal is to grow it, hopefully over the next year, for me to be able to take a leave of absence for my job, for us to have our next child in my field. There's not a whole lot I can do pregnant in my field, so I would actually have to take about a year's leave, probably.
well, good luck with that.
Certainly, I think, I speak for maybe the whole commission that we'd like to see another new business in town.
Mm-hmm.
We definitely need business.
We
and
need his business too. We
Being-
need that type of business.
We do. And
It's
being-
hard to get people to work on it.
And being a young couple that, you have many, many years in that business, so.
Well, could I have staff, if I could ask a question? All right, so if we do approve this business for this homeowner at this address and they move, now, does this address still consider a business, or do they take the business stops?
I initially think that the business permit is attached to the parcel, so it would not go with them, but I can't confirm that right now. I'm not positive.
So are we creating a commercial place, a spot then?
Downtown Florida.
It's almost like it's not necessarily a spot.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying?
But a sunset.
Or do we put it in, it stops if they leave?
Okay, so you're asking if there should be a sunset clause of
Right.
sort? like, say, if the applicant of the home-based business moves from parcel said, the land use permit expires
It stops
with the applicant moving.
moving. Yeah, okay.
Or they terminate it themselves, I think would be a very good, you know, because if they choose not to move, then, and they want to move, take their business elsewhere, we should allow them also to do that, so.
Oh,
Rob, you said you spoke to the person who complained about the noise and fumes
yeah.
and stuff?
Yes, I think we should consider their
We-
side too while everyone's here. So, before moving on to your vote, I think we should have the neighbor, if you will, speak, Mark, and we can all get on the same page.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And the neighbor, okay.
Good evening, my name is Mark Leeski. I'm a property owner at 375 7th Street in Manistee. I'm in with agreement with them. I have no problem with people turning wrenches. I'm retired military, so I know what, you have to work. As long as they prescribe to 1847C, that we don't hear it or smell it, I'm fine with what they do. That's, gotta make a buck someplace,
Mm-hmm.
so. It's just the fumes and the noise. That's, please,
Would the fan that we talked about?
Yes.
If they were to install that fan on the roof of the garage to disperse the fumes, do you think that would suffice the problem you're having with the fumes?
if it's exited toward the alley,
No, it would
Perhaps.
be,
oh,
well,
just up and out,
yeah,
I think so. As long as it's not open air exhaust, because we live in such close proximity to each other
mm,
that having windows open, I get everything,
okay.
so.
Yeah.
So, I
That's
think,
fine.
I think what you're saying then is the building would have to be enclosed, and then the fumes would have to be
Gone out.
exited up.
Right.
And out. And is that workable? For what you're doing? Or maybe there are other options that you could look at?
well, that's part of why we're asking what is considered obnoxious fumes.
Yeah, yeah.
Beyond normal home fumes, because these are normal home fumes. He works on his own stuff in our own yard, so is there like a certain amount more we're not allowed to make? I mean, what
Well,
is normal fumes?
I guess to me, if someone were to run a car or a lawnmower or a chainsaw, anything that's producing fumes, if you're running that for an extended period of time, that would be kind of excessive. I mean, usually you start your car, you back out and you take off.
Right, right.
So it would be, I would think, anything running for a period of time that's consistently producing fumes.
Mm-hmm.
How long you typically run it usually? So is it possible that we could say there's a specific amount of time we're allowed to run the engine at one point to
That,
get
that might be,
more?
Between a certain time of the day to a certain time of the day, is that what you're thinking?
no.
No, just a block of time.
That you're
Yeah.
producing fumes, like
I
20
mean,
minutes.
it takes us 20 minutes, let's take 30 minutes to mow our lawn, so just mowing our lawn
Mhm.
is,
Right.
is creating the same amount of fumes he's creating, so that's why we're trying to find out. I mean, how is somebody complaining about it going to know the difference between our own personal use and
Right.
business, and his business, literally the same fumes? That's what
Well,
we just wanna specify so
Right.
we know how to stay within the parameters.
And maybe that's the question, is it the same amount of exhaust that's being emitted into the air from running a lawnmower? You're moving, so the fumes supposedly would be dissipating. Whereas if you're kind of working on something stationary, that fume concentrate is there for 20 minutes to half an hour. guess that's kind of what I'm envisioning.
Might I ask, sir, where are you located to their home?
Pardon?
Where are you located to their residence?
I'm right next door.
Well, I thought they talked to both of them and they agreed. Didn't you say that?
At the beginning, yes.
Oh, at the beginning. Oh, I see. Oh, now you change your mind. Oh,
I'm right next,
No.
what's that?
I'm right next door, sir,
Right next door. Okay, okay.
to the
okay.
west of them.
So you're not running multiple engines at the same
No.
time?
Never. No,
I mean, that would be the only way that you would have
Yeah.
in my estimation anyway, you would have a excess amount of exhaust if you're running
More than
4 chainsaws at once.
Yeah, he was only by himself, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I had to ask that question.
Yes, you did. It's a good question.
In the garage, and you've got a fan trying to exhaust that out through the ceiling of the garage.
Uh-huh.
I mean, does that seem logical that that would?
Well, it would take it up and,
Well,
it would take it up and it depends on how, depends on the individual. It still may bother, I don't know, yeah.
To me, it does, because, and I'll go back to my Four Winds days when the DEQ, made Four Winds put up exhaust stacks that were 100 feet high,
Uh-huh.
but it would take the styrene out past residential.
Yeah.
So with adding a rooftop exhaust with a fan moving the air up, taking the fumes out,
Yeah.
would be the sensible
Yeah.
and logical process.
Yeah, I don't know if it'd have to be 100 feet high, but,
No, it's not gonna,
I mean, we could cut it down
zoning laws against
80,
that, Roger,
maybe
so.
75, 80.
Regarding the, so that will take care of the odor, as well as, so regarding noise, is it something to consider that noise to be created between a small amount of hour window per day so that the neighbor, if you will, could maybe go to the park or leave the home or something, if it was too loud, if you will, do you know what I'm saying? So you could be wrenching from 9 to 11 and then have some noise between 11 and 1, if you will, or would that be something to consider for either party? Because the noise is gonna be a tough one in the sense of a neighborhood with close parameters of residential structures, in the sense of, obviously, working on your home, cutting the lawn and such, so, do you have any suggestions, I guess?
Well, according to C, it should be invisible, and that means working in the garage with the exhaust up. I would say insulation in the garage to keep the sound down.
My question is, are you located on the east or west side of the?
West side, sir.
Is your garage insulated now?
No.
Would it be,
Is that makes it tough, if you're gonna run a business, to soundproof it, like it says here in the ordinance.
Yeah.
would it be,
Fine if they did that,
Oh, if they did the insulation to soundproof it?
if they complied with the regulation and zoning, that's fine.
Oh, okay.
I have no objections about that.
Well, they have to comply anyhow. So, okay.
Well, I apologize, I know it's up to you.
Oh, okay. No, not a problem, not a problem.
Well, it sounds like you said you're going to insulate anyway, so that you can work in the wintertime?
Yeah, so that would end in.
You'll have a Modine or something in there?
I'm sorry, what was that?
You'll have a Modine in the garage?
For heat?
I don't know what that means.
A heater?
Heater.
Heater.
Yeah, we have to work with, the fire department to find out what safe heat source would be for that environment.
Smokes, yeah.
something to consider as well for, the commission is, the gentleman's located to the west. So, the rooftop, ventilation would be blowing it to the east, so.
Generally.
Yeah, if they were to do, they'd have to have the ventilation. Yeah, I think it's workable. I mean, I think.
I mean, are both parties happy?
I am. If they
Yeah.
With those conditions of
go about what they're doing.
insulation.
Would you be willing, Kyle, to work with them?
I would definitely, did you have something to say really quick?
Oh, no, if you just pose the question, are both parties happy?
Yeah.
I was just kidding.
And.
Oh, yeah, go
well,
ahead.
yes or no?
that's what Kyle's gonna provide for you when, yeah. So you,
What are you saying? I'm sorry, can you say that again? You want,
Know what will resolve the problem? I
oh,
think
the
is what
certain
you're saying.
stipulations of,
she's looking for limits.
When we met with you previously, we posed the question, what is considered what is considered an acceptable decibel for normal noise? And that's the question that came up again tonight is,
Yeah.
how do we know what our parameters are? I mean, we can't tiptoe around each job like, ooh, is this too much? I'm not sure.
Well, we don't have a decibel level.
No, we did, Mark, remember, didn't we, back with Maureen and that, about a couple of years back, come up with a decimal level? She was in here.
I
Did?
think there is
I
a
beat her.
notice in here.
I don't know if Denise ever wrote it down. I don't
Well,
know.
there was,
There was some.
I don't recall, but I mean, it's common sense. If you're gonna fix on small motors, it's like a guy cutting his grass, right? If I have to cut my grass, the engine you're gonna be working on is similar to a grass cutter. So it's not gonna be any out of the ordinary in the neighborhood, you know? So, I mean, yeah. Right. Right. And the thing of it is, my grandson cuts it, he takes 2 hours to cut the grass, so I got 2 hours of a lawnmower running. So, I mean, that's emitting the noxious fumes, so, and I haven't had any complaints yet, I don't know. What else you gonna do? You gotta cut the grass. Yeah, but if you're willing to work with hours and stuff, I think so.
so should I look up the decibel level of a lawnmower and consider that the highest decibel level?
Exactly.
oh, because.
a chainsaw is
because you have
higher.
chainsaws.
Gonna be
Okay, so
louder.
should I look up the highest level of a chainsaw or is,
Weed whip, because they're gonna run at twice or 3 times the RPM of a lawn.
The fastest weed whipper.
Yeah.
okay, so this is a vote on contingencies and stipulations for this, sorry, was there any more discussion?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. As a rule, insulation is not as soundproofing. It's not as effective as that soundproof that you put in your walls. Like say if you're playing loud music, you know how you can put the soundproofing? Because insulation, I don't think will cut the sound down that much.
I know when I go by your house, it's pretty loud.
I know it.
I know, it's the same
I
thing.
have no complaints either.
Okay, so what are you recommending?
Well, I'm just stipulating, I don't think just insulating
Well, there's,
will cut the noise, you
well,
know?
there's ways of doing it on a relatively inexpensive basis of you're putting glass in the, rolled fiberglass in the walls,
Right,
and then putting a foam board
right.
over it. That's gonna be a sound deadener. And then you can, put your OSB or whatever you want on the walls, and that's gonna be a sound deadener, so.
Right.
Could we put in a stipulation on the west wall possibly, so we're not causing if they're doing this to supplement their income, could we only put it on the walls that are needed for the home business, such as like the west wall facing the neighbor, or any that are directly on the sides if there was another neighbor directly close to it, so we're not putting an unneeded burden on the
Right, right.
Homeowner.
Yeah, so it's all, yeah, there
I mean,
you go.
they're starting out, and
Yeah,
we don't want you to
no,
put so many stipulations that you fail.
no, that's true.
Okay, so I just want to go over this one more time, okay?
Sure.
So the home-based business is being voted on tonight based on the stipulations of physical working hours between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., the proper roof ventilation to the east of the property, insulating the garage to the west side of the garage to ensure that noise levels are deadened to the best of their abilities under the decibel level of the highest possible, which is a chainsaw. There's a sunset clause potentially on this permit that when the applicant of the home-based business moves from this parcel, that the permit expires upon that. Or a termination by the applicant if they would like to discontinue their permit before, if they don't decide to move, to terminate the permit,
Right, okay.
Will you be the only one working there? You won't have employees?
Yeah,
So is the commission satisfied with the stipulations?
I'd say so.
Shelley?
Yes.
I mean, it's gonna be up between the neighbor, I guess, if, you know, I mean,
So-
we can only do so much.
So Mr. Lieska, are you satisfied with that?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay,
Okay.
satisfied?
Yeah.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you,
much.
sir.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Okay, so the planning commission now can take a vote to approve of the home-based business based on stipulations. Oh, if that's okay.
Oh,
Right.
you're set with? Okay, great.
Kyle's
Okay.
gonna help them.
And Kyle you'll
Get the
walk
crystal
with
ball.
them on this?
Definitely, of course.
Okay, all right.
I'd be more than.
Okay, so we're set, we need a motion,
Mhm.
so motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we approve the home-based business with the stipulations that were brought by Kyle. You know, the ventilation, 9 to 5, insulated west wall, decimal of a chainsaw, and the sunset or termination of the contract if they would.
Okay,
Is that all you wanted, Kyle?
That's what, yep, yes.
second by Marlene. Any more discussion?
Let them go.
None? Please take roll.
Commissioner Thomas?
Yes.
Commissioner Weiner?
Yes.
Commissioner McBride?
Yes.
Commissioner Yoder?
Yes.
Chair Whitliff?
Yes,
Motion is passed.
thank you.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good luck.
Yeah, just don't
Get
cut
the
your,
business cards made up. Drop them by my office. I will keep you busy.
Good thinker.
I think this was a setup job. Here's our card.
It's good to hear everyone laughing and smiling.
This is a happy bunch, so.
Yeah, but you gotta be.
Okay,
Try to be fair to everybody.
That's right. moving along to old business.
Right.
Update on 900 Vine Street.
I'll read the memo into correspondence. Attached is the current land use permit for 900 Vine Street, which has not been met as noted by Chair Whitliff. Under condition 10, the smoking area is to incorporate green space and buffering if possible. The zoning administrator notes the landowner, Best Drug Rehabilitation, has been very workable in fixing the noted issue. Following the permit is correspondence from Best Drug Rehabilitation's Executive Director Roy King stating that the corporate office will be sending up a crew to do the fence. The graphics attached highlight the proposed smoking buffer, including green space, showcasing its compliance. Here's the land use permit as showcase number 10 with the buffer. The correspondence says that they're coming up to fix the fence, and this is the map or the proposed fence. So the buffer will be a 50-foot, 6-foot tall fence to the same materials as the fence existing to the west side of the property. There will be a entry and exit swing door to the smoking area, as well as a bench, and it has some trees to the northwest corner and bushes and a door leading to the property. Therefore, I consider this a buffering with green space, and consider that the permit is back in compliance.
Okay.
Yeah, that-
And that fence is up?
Not yet, I haven't confirmed that this week, though after the meeting, I will go look at the fence soon.
no, I went by there. I don't think the fence is up.
I haven't been going by there in a while, so,
All right,
but maybe there's a ride.
Last week.
No? Okay.
always after the smokers. God darn it.
Yeah.
You know where I am, so.
Now what do you got going there? All right.
Okay, the next, sign ordinance review from surrounding communities.
So, the sign ordinance for the city of Manistee is showcased, hold on a second, let me switch these around so that they're not this landscape, hold on. Regardless, the city of Manistee's zoning ordinance is 5 pages and very, not necessarily primitive, but it outlines things with words, and it's a conflicting document for a lot of people to read and such. Therefore, it's being brought to your attention that we need to potentially, hold on a second, change the ordinance for for signs so that we will be not necessarily in conflict with a lot of different situations. So,
Yeah.
okay. So this is the current City of Manistee's sign ordinance. It's all words in a table eventually on page 5. The table is pretty convoluted in the sense of the left side describes the district. It could be reworked is what I'm trying to say. Other cities have different sign ordinances that have graphics and different images, if you will, so that a sign in question is easily definable. Therefore, there is not much, how do I say this, arguing or conflict. The Frankfurt one is showcases it nicely in the sense of the exact height requirements and what that entails. As we continue, the city of Ann Arbor has a very nice sign ordinance in the extent that they have a table of contents. I mean, they have 22 different pages, and it intertwines images with definitions and ordinance language and different tables and such. So that being said, other communities like even the city of Petoskey basically just has great imagery and definitions underneath the images that make it clear to someone applying for a sign permit and the zoning administrator as the sign permit administrator to quickly and clearly define what's happening and to get to a sensible conclusion by showcasing examples that are readily available and easily to portray. So these are just examples right now. We haven't necessarily dove into the sign ordinance specifically in the extent that we would like to see these specific things. I just wanted to bring to your attention that, like we talked about last meeting, that signs are a questionable part of the ordinance right now in the city of Manistee, and it's been difficult for the planning department to have disputing community members go back and forth about things that something like this would easily clear up and take care of. So this is a project for a couple different months or seasons coming up because of the extent of development season upon us at the office. It's not something that we should that we can consider fully diving into right now. I just wanted to bring to your attention that this is something that we would like to see worked on, and with your blessing, I guess, if you will, it'll be something that will be addressed in the slower months, maybe the fall or the winter. So these are examples of cities that have really great sign ordinances and something that we should consider moving forward with the city of Manistee.
What do you think, commissioners? Something?
Well, is it through the fall, or that we start the work session if it's needed?
Right, yeah, I mean, in the fall, if work sessions are needed to tackle this,
I mean,
and so be it.
Was it that we worked on them signs? All of a sudden, they're no good? Yeah. Man, we've worked on that sign ordinance for a long time.
Yeah, we did.
Forgive me if I said anything rude about it.
We've just ran into several gray areas within the sign ordinance that are preventing us from enforcing. It's right now the sign ordinance leads to where we're interpreting the sign ordinance as opposed to it telling us what to do. And when we're leaving it open to interpretation, it's really can blow up in our face as far as if business owners want to get lawyers involved. And we ran into several issues where the sign ordinance has things in it such as that we'd like maybe address sooner than later. One recommendation would be when a sign is no longer in use, that when a new tenant comes into the building, we don't wait 6 months, but when a new tenant comes into the building, that they immediately have to come up to code on the sign ordinance. There is many businesses in town that are basically grandfathered in because of the sign ordinance, and we can't bring them up to date because of it. The sign ordinance also, it fails us in the fact that if we do not send out a letter immediately when a business leaves, if a business is able to get in there in 6 months, they're able to use that grandfather clause to just change the signage and keep the existing sign. There's one business that comes to mind immediately. Your sign ordinance says there are no rooftop signs. The Love Riviera has a rooftop sign, and they plan on changing out the lettering on it, and we have no real way of saying, hey, you have to come in and conform with the ordinance. So we're talking to them about it. It's something we're addressing, but we know the sign hasn't been used in over 6 months. However, since no letter was sent out, we have no way of enforcing that. So it's unfortunate, but you also see that with the pole sign within the MSO district that's been for sale for over a year. Since nothing was sent out on it, again, we can't enforce them taking it down. Because if they basically challenged us, they would win, because they could say, well, you're supposed to, where's my notice that this sign is no longer in use? So there are some problems on it. One of those things is we would like an amendment at some point soon to say, like, if the sign becomes no longer in use, you can't hide behind the grandfather clause and you have to come up to date of the signing ordinance. So.
That'll be coming down the way. We just wanted to bring it to your attention that.
Thank you.
That sounds like it'll take some time.
Okay, next, the FEMA maps.
FEMA maps, yeah.
Okay, so I'll read the memo so we're all on the same page. Okay, attached are examples of current FEMA designated areas for flood zone management. The AE designated area is showcased with the orange line in the first graphic. The AE zone is defined by FEMA as areas subject to inundation by the 1% annual chance flood event determined by detailed methods including over 150 storm samples. Mandatory flood insurance, purchase requirements, and floodplain management standards do apply to this zone, if you will. Anything outside of the orange barrier in second attached graphic is designated as Zone X, which is defined as moderate to low risk flood areas. FEMA is holding an open house at the Manistee County Sheriff Department's conference space on August 13th from 5 to 7 p.m. FEMA engineers will be on site to answer any questions regarding specific parcels and communities. All interested community members are welcome to attend. That being noted, also attached is past correspondence regarding waterfront yards and FEMA map overlays with that area in question. The zoning administrator is requesting the Planning Commission's opinion and recommendation handling residential land use permits along this specific area. As to A, interpret the ordinance as written in the sense of allowing land use buildings according to the normal R1 setbacks, or B, interpreting ordinance as parcels being within 100 feet of the channel and using waterfront lot setback standards. So when we talked about this before, it's a kind of a gray area though, as a resident put in to words that these parcels are not necessary. I guess we can continue with this FEMA area designation before I get into that though. So, okay, here's some areas around Lake Manistee and the coast that have these AE designated areas and AO designated areas and things like that. Did you want to read what those areas are really quick?
Right. So this wasn't included in your packet, so I will let you know what these each stand for, basically. So a V area is a coastal area with a 1% or greater chance of flooding and an additional hazard associated with storm waves. These areas have a 26% chance of flooding over the life of a 30-year mortgage, and no base flood elevations are shown within these zones. Coastal areas of VE, coastal areas with a 1% or greater chance of flooding. Additional hazards associated with the storm waves. These areas have a 26% chance of flooding over the life of a 30-year mortgage based on flood elevations derived from detailed analysis as shown at selected intervals within the zones.
Just read this AE one.
And then the AE one is probably the most for the channel question, and that is the base flood plan where base flood elevations are provided. AE zones are now used on new firm maps instead of A1, A30, which were known as the old format. They're numbered A zones, which this I thought did a better job of doing, explaining this, but the AO zones are 1 to 3 feet ways. These areas have a 26% chance of flooding over a life of a 30-year mortgage, and average flood depths derived from detailed analysis shown within these areas. So if we were to look at the map of the river frontage, the areas where the water is to the orange line are considered the AE areas. Everything beyond that is what's considered an X area, which is area of moderate flood hazard, usually the area between the limits of 100-year to 500-year floods. B zones, which this isn't, are designated base floodplains with lesser hazards, such as protected by levees from a 100-year floodplain or shallow flooding areas with the average depths of less than 1 foot or drainage areas of less than 1 square mile. The X are they're moderate chance of floodage, but they're still very, very low. It's considered an area of minimum flood hazard, usually depicted on firms as above the 500-year flood level. Zone X is an area determined to be outside of 500-year flood and protected by a levee or a 100-year flood. So the chances of those areas flooding outside of the AE area are X areas, and they're significantly low, is what they're trying to say. If you look at the parcel map that's located on this page with the blue, it shows the parcels in question with the city-owned property in front with the AE flood area associated with it. There is a rise to this area, but FEMA considers it a low area of risk, and I believe that is the area that was in discussion by the city engineer, but not in official capacity.
So it's a moderate flood zone. The orange is the flood issues up to that line. So the big concern of making 100-foot setbacks is possibly not a huge concern for this exact area, and something that maybe should not have been looked into this in depth, though it is something to question that this is rising. The channel is, it's a concern for the city in the sense that if the water obviously keeps rising, that there will be potential future issues. So I'm not sure that the 100-foot waterfront setback is necessarily a necessary parameter to consider for this, but I think it's something.
So one thing to keep in consideration is also the modeling for this AE designated area is taken off of the last 150 storm activities from the last 50 years. The water level is obviously high at this point in time. FEMA has not been willing to say further what they expect to happen outside of what we've heard of the year, which they expect the water to rise further. Also to keep in mind is, I'm going to say it wrong, but the swage events that we've had, the sage, yes, I always mess it up and I apologize, I can't ever say it right. That is also something to consider for this area. From a zoning aspect, we're just looking for a little bit of guidance and looking to the board for a recommendation on how they wish us to proceed within this area and the questions brought forth by the citizens.
To me, it's a lot to digest right now. Whether we should make the changes. We haven't seen something like this before. How come, Mark? How come we didn't see this when we were setting up the setbacks?
FEMA will be in town, if you will, in a month, so it's something to consider that all maybe potential land use applications go forward until maybe a FEMA recommendation or something from the Planning Commission. That's something to consider also.
We will be attending the FEMA session. There's a private session for planners and stuff like that between 2 and 5, and then there's an open house. Within the open house, individuals within coastal areas can come in and ask questions specifically related to their parcel. So it's really beneficial if somebody does have a question. regarding not only things along this nature, but also insurance and what they need to do.
Okay, have the coastal addresses been notified of this happening?
We just found out about this recently. Actually, no firm date had been set until a couple days ago when we contacted the FEMA director. As far as I know, there's not been a mass mailing going out or anything along those lines.
Probably a good idea.
That's why we also brought it forth in this to put it in a public setting to, try to alert the public in that way that this is something that's being provided. So.
Will there be a, something in the paper or on the radio?
We
you
could
put out?
contact the paper and let them know that it is taking place as an open house. I think that would be beneficial.
Yeah.
We just we haven't got that far into the discussion yet. That is something we will definitely look to do. I think it does need to be put out because there's a lot of questions, not just from citizens within the channel or on the immediate coast, but Arcadia. We've been receiving calls from them about insurance flood and around the surrounding communities too. It might also be beneficial just to send out a small mailing as well as to the townships, just allowing their boards to know that this is something that's coming. So, and then they can alert their citizens as well.
Can we add that to the city website, under, and I haven't been on the city website in a while, so excuse me.
Current event, I don't know if there's a calendar, I know there's a calendar, but you mean like a current event or a calendar item?
Yeah, maybe probably add it on the county's website also,
Definitely.
if there is such a spot for that.
There is a calendar on county.
Okay.
Alright.
So the question is, when land use permits come to the planning department in areas such as showcased in the blue parcels, if you will, does the planning commission recommend that the land use permits be determined from the setbacks as an R1 existing non-waterfront setback then, or from a waterfront setback standard?
Should we keep it as is or change it? Is that what you're asking?
Sure.
Correct.
Okay. What is the thoughts of the commission?
Well, at this time, I'm kind of confused, and it's hard to believe, but I'd say keep it as is, and we can always change it, but I'm not sure what we're changing it to if I say change, you know? So I'd say keep it as is as of right now, until I get a little more information or understand it.
What exactly is it as is right now? What is
As
it?
is the parcels in blue would have a 10-foot setback, if you will, from the rear lot line.
Right.
The blue lines?
From the blue lines on the north side of the parcels up.
And you wanna change it to the yellow line or the orange line?
No, since although it's not specifically abutting the water, it's within 100 feet of the water, so I think we should consider in the future for parcels like this, because of higher water levels, that
Right.
not necessarily having a 100-foot setback, but maybe some other type of setback for this specific area, because it is R1, and other R1 that's in the coastal areas abutting water is already 100 feet, so I think it's something to consider to have a different setback, that's all.
Yeah.
Does it make any difference within these parcels that are being shown here, that it goes from their property line to city property and then to the water in the channel? Does that make any difference?
Yes, the blue parcels don't technically right now have a 100-foot water setback because they don't abut the water specifically, and that's.
Right, and
is
that was his point,
Right.
I think.
Mm-hmm. So it's a convoluted thing that I guess I brought to the attention because of the high eroding bank that it reads a certain way, and I would just like clarification if we should proceed with an R1 setback not abutting the water, or if you consider that these, although they don't technically parcel-wise abut the water, if we should consider a different setback for parcels that don't abut the water to have a setback more than what they already currently do. That's all I'm asking. It's pretty convoluted, and I understand it's a lot of information. It reads, it can be interpreted different ways reading it, and I just need to know what the commission believes we should do.
Yeah, you would either or, change it or leave it.
Are you saying then that we're just, for this purpose of this discussion, talking about the R1?
For this discussion specifically, we're asking if this area in question, if a land use permit came into this exact area, if the setback should be considered a normal R1 setback, which it currently technically could read that way, or if it's a waterfront setback, which is a different number, different amount of footage.
Yeah, and this is the part we got, or else I got a little confused last meeting, is how can you call it waterfront when their property line doesn't go to the water? It's city property.
I understand.
That's
I just consider it to be a high-impact area with the erosions and things coming, and something to consider, being that regardless of it touching the water, it's within 100 feet, and that's something to note by high water level events that it will continue to happen.
There still needs to be pulled, like, you know, even if you're, so for instance, like the marijuana service overlay, all those businesses are within 500 feet of Lake Manistee, and even though they're not on the water, they still have to pull soil erosion permits. So it's kind of falling along this slope of it, and we have to be really cautious on this as well, because if we don't rule on a specific area, and this is the only area that's like this in the city where the parcels don't actually come up on it. If anything were to happen in the future where there's like some kind of easement or something like that, it could open it up to where somebody tries to say it's a different than what it is, I guess, is what I'm saying. So it's just something to consider. There is a rise here on these parcels. That's something else to consider. It's not like a flat bank as well. So,
Right.
So I think it's a very hard question that we're putting forth here today, and we recognize that, but we kind of need an answer.
They leave it as is, till we understand it better.
Can we, if we leave it as is, and then can we revisit this after the FEMA meeting?
I would recommend
Because
that.
we're gonna have more information.
I would recommend that might be a very good idea, and also to encourage Sean to maybe ask explicitly about that, or we can ask explicitly about these parcels here.
Yeah.
And say, and then we can come back and say, hey, this is what they said, and maybe that will give you guys a better understanding of what is actually taking place here. So.
There you go.
So is that the wishes of the commission to leave it as is until the FEMA meeting? That way we'll have a basket full of information.
Correct.
So,
There you
okay. Then we will do that.
Okay, now you need a motion to that effect?
We need a motion,
Yeah.
or,
I would say yeah, but I would, or probably not actually. Just a recommendation, I guess, or.
I don't know if do you need
No.
a motion to leave it as is? I don't think so.
a recommendation to leave it as is
Yeah,
until,
I mean, so give
The
you
FEMA-
protection.
till the FEMA meeting.
Yeah,
It's 8:13.
Well, that would give us more information for
Yeah.
their problem that they have, how to better help them.
well, yeah, they're not sure if they're waterfront or not.
No, but once we have more
Oh, yeah.
information, we can help them better, their problem.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Open meeting, like for residents, is 5 to 7 on the 13th?
Yeah, it will be an open house, and it will be at the Manistee County Sheriff's Office in their what is the room called? Conference room. I couldn't think of the word. Yeah, so.
Alrighty.
Okay.
Okay.
What is the date for that? What's the date for that?
It is,
August
right
13th.
here, August 13th from 5 to 7.
Okay, public comments and communication. Chair will ask if there's any public comments on business matters. Anybody? Nothing? Okay. Correspondence, is there any correspondence that has been received?
None to read, no.
No? Okay.
No correspondence.
Staff reports?
So it's been quite a busy week that last 2 weeks regarding the marijuana special use permitting process. The amount of applicants on, since Friday, if you will, have been a total of, there've been 7 applications. The first flush of reviews yielded 1 complete accepted application out of 7. Upon that initial review, the 6 other applicants who were denied, if you will, were sent their memo letters and reasons why they were denied. Those applicants, well, actually, 4 applicants, 3 total applicants, took the reviews seriously, if you will, and turned them over around and resubmitted, which we then reviewed the things that we pulled out, and we have 4 completed accepted applications currently. So the first completed application came in 30 days before August 1st, the next scheduled Planning Commission meeting, one of the 4. The other 3 came in after the 30-day mandatory deadline for August 1st. So it's something to consider onto the next staff report, potential special Planning Commission meeting times so that we adhere to the 30-day mandatory minimum time between a completed application and the Planning Commission meeting, hearing, if you will, public hearing for these said marijuana special use permits. So I'm inquiring and recommending that we have a Planning Commission meeting on Thursday, August 15th at hopefully earlier than 7 p.m. For the extent that we expect another 3 or 4 applications turned in tomorrow, which will be still 30 days before the August 15th, being that today is the 11th. Therefore, potentially, if those go through and are completed and accepted, as well as some of the other ones that were revised and submitted before the 15th of July, we could be upwards of 10 or so special use permit presentations. These presentations, what?
At one time?
It is the staff's recommendation that we do these all on one day.
So we can see the different applicants and we can interview them all with the same questions. I know your initial probable reaction, though, assuming would be, you know, a lot to handle, which we do understand and agree, because the packets for each of these applications are upwards of 10 to 20 pages. Though, like Mike was saying, to see all of them in the same room at once, if you will, and to hear the presentations and the potential redevelopment opportunities could be a very great opportunity to compare them all at once before voting them through, if you will, through the special use permit process. So it's completely up to you, though. We're recommending a special meeting time regardless of if it's 1 or 2 different special meetings, though the development season is very strong right now and upon us, and that turning these over to the next process of the city's marijuana permitting process is of a staunch timeline, if you will. So it's on the Planning Commission to decide if 1, 2, what dates, times, the earlier the better for, I would recommend the planning department would concur that pulling these long days until 7, I mean, and that's not an excuse, I'm just saying if we could do earlier, that would be recommended, but it's up to you as to.
We also recommend that the one that did get in prior to the other ones be pushed off until the 15th as well, to where we really do all of them at one time. You guys will be able to see the plans as a whole. And
We'll have them laid out in the room.
right, I think it's just a better process in all if we are able to see them at one time as opposed to individuals.
Are these just for the retail aspect of the?
So it is our understanding that they are able to apply at the same time for multiple licenses, so retail and provisional.
Which is something
However,
they could answer during the interview.
right, however, I don't think that will change their plans. So, as far as the special use, they're covered under both of those, is from our understanding, so it doesn't really change their plans going forward. And any questions, as far as, the changes to the interior of the building or what would be required, could be asked of them at that time.
So you're thinking, get through 10 presentations from starting at 7, we wouldn't get out of here until.
No, we would like to go earlier in the day, but we would really like to start and go through them all at one time.
Fair.
What time do you want to start?
We would leave that to the board's discretion. I realize that you guys all have jobs as well, so I would like to personally,
Whatever works best.
but I mean, earlier the better, but whatever works for the council. We would like, I think it's a really a big undertaking, as well as I would like obviously the members to be here if possible. So if we can set a time, I think that works for everybody, that's the best. And even if it drags out into a 2-day thing where we do the 15th and the 16th if we had to, as long as we're doing them back to back, I think that's going to be the way to go forward and do it. Because we can have them, everybody here in the same room, show their plans, and then go right through them. And if we have to call it for the one night, we can pick up on the next.
Thinking starting at 3 or noon or?
It's, the earlier the better. 3 would be great.
I think 3 would work.
If everyone can make it. I mean, 2 hours off of a working day is,
Are hands tied once they submit an application? Do we have X amount of days to forward it?
we have 30 days to turn it. It has to be submitted before 30 days of a completed application to the.
Alright.
What do you, I guess, can you rephrase the question?
I mean, you've got an application, how long is it for us to move it to the next step? Do we have X amount of time, or do we have 6 months or 30 days, or?
Oh, for us, when we receive an application, we have a 10-day turnaround, 10 business days to turn it around. We've been doing it much quicker than that for the most part. And we're really trying to push to try to get these all done at one time. So with the way that, and the nature of the submittal process and a first come, first served basis on these licensing and the limiting number of these licenses as far as like the retail goes, the developers recognize that they need to get in sooner than later. So they've been very, very quick to try to get us to turn them around.
It's very competitive.
So we've been trying to get them around quicker. Like I said, we're probably gonna get 3 or 4 tomorrow, and we're gonna attempt to try to get them on the docket as well for the 15th. I think we could probably do it. We're just gonna have
If we set the date of the 15th, we still
That's
have to,
correct.
we still have to define a date, and we're recommending the 15th, so it's up to the.
Okay. Ms. Jackson,
Yeah, this far in advance, I can be.
August 15th, yeah.
If the council has a better date that's a little further out, that would work for us.
We started at 3 on the 15th. You think we could get through all of them?
I definitely think we could.
I think we could.
If we allot a specific amount of time per presentation, we wouldn't have run-ons and different variances. I think it'd be good to have a defined, 20-minute presentation, 10-minute question and answer, and then also have an open house at the end, if you will. It's a public hearing. I mean, so, people are gonna have the opportunity to speak upon this behalf. We're mailing everyone within 300 feet of these.
Great.
It will take hours, if you will, so starting at 3, I wouldn't even venture to guess, but having a 20-minute presentation and a 10-minute question and answer for the 10 applicants, I mean, that leaves 5 hours.
Yeah.
I mean, plus the walking around and the, if you will, having the plans out for everyone to look at and the public hearing of comments. I mean, each person gets 3 minutes. I mean, 20 people speaking on each plan is another hour times 10. I mean, it's something to consider regarding making it as early as we feasibly can, just so we can get it done in one day. And if you make the presentation amount of time and stick to it, it will be more of a concrete process. I would recommend that.
So if,
Yep.
once we go through this, the process of
Yeah.
reviewing all the plans,
Marco?
our decision, I mean, what type of time frame do we have
I would say, oh, sorry for interrupting. I would,
to approve, disapprove, approve with changes?
I
Do
would
we
say-
do it that day?
I would not say you do it that day. I would say you do it at the next meeting in September.
Right,
Okay.
right,
Next
right.
meeting, okay.
All right.
The regularly scheduled meeting in September is when I would recommend that everything that was heard 2 weeks prior had enough time to digest, we have enough time to speak about it amongst whomever, and bring back the
Decision.
the decisions and the, you know, during the process of the agenda that says, you know, old business or any public comments, then we'll be able to go through that. And the agenda will have each applicant's address and name, quickly do a rundown of their presentation without, you know, doing the presentation and then a vote. I would, or
Want to do that here, that meeting?
the 15th special meeting, I would, yeah.
So is, the wishes of the commission to start the meeting, the special meeting on the 15th at 3 PM? Raj?
Yeah, that'd be all right.
Arlene?
Are the questions we ask, are you going to find questions, or do we find questions, or dig them up, or what questions do you have?
We have a list of bullet points of things that aren't necessarily on the special use requirements checklist, though we have some recommendations from the planning department, including different things like the rain gardens that would help mitigate stormwater runoff, or potentially other things like connecting different parcels with drives, as well as closing curb cuts that aren't necessarily requirements, though they are questions and stipulations that I think we need to raise and see the level of commitment of each applicant towards the exact visions that the commission as well as the city members have presented during public comments, during, you know, everything that's been read into correspondence.
Something to keep in mind also is that we have put recommendations towards the development teams prior to their submittal. Whether they chose to implement those or not, we had no control over, as long as they met the requirements of the special use permit.
Okay, so we're looking at August 15th at 3 PM though, right?
Yeah, that's what.
And do we want to stipulate the amount of time per presentation so that every applicant has the same amount of required, or amount of potential time? Maybe 15 minutes per application, or 20?
We should have
Well,
20.
how detailed are they gonna be getting?
I could see them being very detailed. Some of the businesses have would get into all manner of things as far as ventilation, because that was a concern expressed by the community. How that works, they could spend easily 15 minutes talking just on that.
Yeah.
But there's many other aspects on it.
I think that we would present an outline, I could present an outline that says, you know, a background of your organization, you know, the current plan or the current processes you have in place that have examples of the business that you're presenting. Do you have any examples of running a marijuana distribution center or whatever? Thirdly, the current site plan of the site, and fourthly, what we will present to the city and what we will do to beautify the area physically and hard, you know, scape wise. And then fifth, what will you give back to the community with monetary, in the sense of beyond the taxation and the entry fees? Like, do you have anything that would be goodwill towards a community service organization, or a bottom line for your
Well, rather than rattle on, I mean, there's got to be other communities that have accepted dispensaries. I'm sure they had questions that we couldn't hit, let's say, Michigan State Extension and ask for, you know.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't have to invent the wheel on questions. I would.
If you'd like to reach out and feel free.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, you could go online and probably go to communities and they'd have a list of questions that they'd ask if you, I mean, okay.
I mean, one thing to look at is maybe some of the Colorado-based communities that have accepted this, or the California-based communities. As far as like the land use goes, though, the keep in mind is our hands are kind of tied as far as like what we can make recommendations. If they adhere to them or not, that's not something we can as soon as they met it, you know, it's kind of on the board to ask these questions of them and what they're going to bring forth.
Signs and stuff like that.
Well, not just signs, but just like beautification efforts and things that the board and the committee wants to see within the community. I keep saying the board, but it's the committee, our commission. But it's more along, once they've kind of met our part. So now for the special use permit, the boxes are checked. Now it's what the commission envisions for the community and what you would like to see if you're going to grant them a special use permit. They are well aware that just because they are granted a line number of when they get to present, they are not guaranteed a license or a special use permit. It is strictly a placeholder where they get to present first.
Right.
So at the next meeting that we have here on August 1st, I will come with a potential outline for the timeline of their presentation and bring some sample questions that I will look up through different agencies like MSU Extension.
Yeah, down in Detroit, they got a couple of those online, and you can go to different communities or counties, and, you know, they'll ask, you can pick up the questions that they were asking. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do. All right. I think, unless you got something else.
Okay, so we're doing August 15th, 3 p.m. special meeting of the Planning Commission in council chambers. All applicants that have been accepted and completed applications are expected to attend with their team of, you know, whoever they would like to bring. I think we should have a stipulation as to the amount of time per each presentation, and we can talk about that at the next meeting, though. Are we thinking 15 or 20 minutes, just so I can kind of get a ballpark?
I'm thinking 20.
Good, at least.
Okay.
They're gonna try to set up business, yeah.
Now, Kyle,
Yeah,
you hit upon a point. If they're not here,
interesting point. So if someone does not attend their special use public hearing, I would suggest that the planning commission recommends that that applicant is not sincere about their business and will be.
Well, we just won't consider his application.
That's what I was.
We got 11 of them. I mean, we definitely got enough people that wanna come in.
Like that before, if they didn't come before.
right.
So one thing the last thing we,
Have to find out tomorrow.
okay, we haven't considered is, and we need to check on, is the chamber available on the 15th for that amount of time?
I can find out tomorrow.
So,
Are we gonna be, are we gonna be looking at more presentations after this date, or is this
Oh.
it?
Oh, there could be potential more presentations in the sense that there are 21 parcels in the district. I'm not exactly positive if every parcel has a potential applicant, though we have up to half of the parcels being discussed or more. I also think that this space will probably not hold everyone that will be here for the public hearing. That being said, we should consider other places that have a big auditorium. I mean,
Right across the street here, from the gazebo. Isn't that big enough for us?
outside, you mean?
No, the marina building
No,
upstairs.
I don't, it's smaller.
You know, this is the the 15th is the third Thursday. Doesn't city council or somebody meet on the first and
That's us.
third?
Or no, we meet on the
On the first.
first. We meet
Two-
on the first.
We normally,
Thursdays? Okay, do you ever do work session on Thursday? No, we do them on Tuesdays. All right,
Tuesday.
sorry. I have dropped by.
Is there a large space besides of the high school that we've had at past presentations that have input and output for flash drive potential and projectors? The bigger the venue, the better. This is a pretty big deal, in my opinion, for the city of Manistee to be opting into something, as no other cities really have gone through this large process, and it should be considered that it's an event. I think it should be, this public hearing should be a large event.
Yeah.
A lot of people will be here, and this place will not hold it all.
Okay, I mean, since we're just
There's
talking here.
10
you're
applications,
talking
and each team has 5 people.
Dispensaries.
I understand.
High school with the cafeteria for the display area.
it's not a great idea.
It's not?
Could the Vogue or the Ramsdale?
For the Ramsdale?
Oh,
Interesting.
But where would you
Yeah,
just,
Volga to Ramsdale.
At the Ramsdale in the.
upstairs?
I'll reach out to them, but we've said it, we just need to find a place on the date of August 15th from 3 p.m. to potentially,
Yeah.
And we have to have enough time to send out notices and such, but I think we'll meet that. We just need to find something within the next couple days.
Yep.
To be able to house the community.
You've already had your lunch.
All right, so I'll send the memos out with August 15th is our special meeting date, and secure the place accordingly. Before sending the memos, I'll send the calls to the Vogue and the Ramsdale as initial potential locales and work from there.
Yeah.
So at the next meeting, though, I will bring an outline for the applicants' presentations and let them know that they have a 20-minute allotted timeline and a 10-minute question and answer period, that everyone needs to stay focused and, if you will, make it as concise as needed, if you will. Okay. All right.
All right. All right.
So I guess we've just crossed off the first two. The next one is the Hollander Development Street Vacation.
Yep, so a developer is coming to town for a planned unit development for affordable housing that I'm working through a street vacation request. Street vacations include vacating streets for potential future development, so that whoever owned the street beforehand has given up that right to the developer. So the vacation request is being worked through, and there should be an application coming very shortly of a planned unit development. I just wanted to bring that to the attention that there's nothing more to discuss about, but that there will be a large planned unit development application coming to town, and that you should be prepared for the packet and a scale of information for this development in the near future.
Where is this development gonna go?
It's north of town near the Olson Lumberyard.
So the Olson Lumberyard, how it crosses over the
Yeah,
street
yeah.
into both areas there, it will
So-
be there. That street they're looking to vacate is the one that's pretty tore up through there, that kind of does that L.
Yeah.
So
And
that's,
then,
that whole site's being redeveloped. The old Olson Lumberyard has been officially in transition, so.
we'll send out a mailing to let the citizens know that that is taking place and to comment on it.
Okay.
The 294 12th Street Development Draft?
The 294 12th Street is currently a self-storage facility with 4 large buildings. There's been a special use permit that has been reapplied for another 5 or so, maybe more phases to be added on to complete the building envelope of 294 12th Street as tightly as possible for the said storage facility. So we are working with the developer Maplewood Homes and their architects and things from West Shore Consulting to get on the same page with their site plan, and there will be something to present shortly to the Planning Commission in the sense of 5 more phases of development in that area. So it's the property just above the hill from the Goodwill there on 12th Street. The city is working through transitioning that street currently, so the developer and the DPW director have been working simultaneously to figure out the right way to go about the curbs and the driveways and the sidewalks.
I think they were even talking sidewalk at one time.
Yep.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Have they got all the requirements from the first phase?
'Cause they
So,
had a drainage issue
it's
or
under
something.
I'm under the impression they have not. So that being said, that was brought to my attention today, and I haven't had time to double back with the developer or his team in the sense of, I understand there could be potential fencing that's not been put in, and there's a large aggregate or material area, if you will, for sand and for the most part, the developer has been fairly straightforward and easy to work with, though lately it's been a very time crunch process as development season winds down and these large projects need many months to get going. It's been a kind of a contentious area in the sense that we've gotten some correspondence that wasn't necessarily all that friendly, but I will look into that, Marlene, fully and formally tomorrow in the sense of seeing exactly the extent of their last special use permit.
I can't see going forward with more if they haven't met the requirements for the first project.
Well, we had quite a mix-up when Denise left.
With the reconstruction of 12th Street too,
Yeah,
reconstruction of 12th Street, they can't put a fence in yet.
yeah, well, yeah.
So-
there you go.
But we have to remember that there is supposed to be a retention pond or some type of drainage
Yeah.
within that complex.
Which is being shown in their remodeled plan. That's changed from their first special use permit in the sense that they thought that the initial plan would be the end of their development of that site. And since their business has no more open lockers, that they are doubling the business, if you will, in footprint and adding a new retention pond on the southeast side and adding native species and making it a rain garden to mitigate runoff. So
Right.
after one of our recommendations, they have gone through with that, which is a good thing to see.
All right,
Yep.
good, fantastic. Housing North meeting?
So we attended the Housing North meeting where it highlighted Manistee and the housing need within the area. It was explicitly looking at cost of living, demographics, those such things. There's a desperate need within Manistee for not only housing but lower income housing. There's highlighted the fact that people can't afford to have housing here as well as with the jobs that they're working.
As well as the quality of housing isn't necessarily what it needs to be to support potential growth. That being said, there is a district in Manistee city limits that has been discussed with the planning department as potential overlay district for housing remodeling in the southeast from 31 to the water and south of the peninsula, though as nothing has been concrete. From Housing North study, there will be a documentation packet of information, if you will, by the end of the month, showcasing this and more specific to our area. And we'll be meeting with Housing North's director, Sarah Lucas, to discuss those in ways that the city of Manistee can adhere to what they are suggesting and how we can make it a more of affordable and higher housing stock. So
That's a good idea.
And then last is the trail update.
We have done and completed our sidewalk inventory. We were, due to a mix-up, we were unable to present at the Forest Festival in town. However, we have decided that that might have been for the best with a lot of tourists in town. We've decided to target the outlet sales that are downtown to go after actual citizens that are here. And find their feeling on it. We're also reaching out within the communities. The Block Party in Onekama today is where Rob's at. He is having very good results within the community as far as trail development. Last I spoke to him before the meeting, there's 30 individuals interested not only in the trails and supportive, they are also willing to volunteer. So the trail plan is looking good. We've developed posters, signage, maps, as well as a survey for them to take. Unfortunately, we gave Rob all of our surveys today. We weren't thinking, or else we would have brought one in for your review. They just asked basic questions about, what would you like to see? What's your main concern with trails? How would you use trails? Those type of questions. How would you support them? Grants, tax increase, millages, those type of things, or reappropriations of funds. So this is mainly what we're asking the community and finding out how important they feel it is, and they seem to be really receptive to it. We're also going to be presenting this weekend at Bear Lake Days. The outlets there, we have a booth secured for that as well, and we'll be around the county gathering support for not only the trails around Manistee Lake, but also a regional trail system that connects all regional trails within our county and exterior counties.
Great.
Denise and I were on that committee, remember? We were meeting up in Arcadia for trails that was gonna run up 22. Whatever happened to it?
Well, it's much needed within the city, county, and area, so, okay, thank you for that. Member discussion, is there anyone that has anything? Shelley?
I just want to say, Kyle and Mike, you guys are doing a great job, keeping us informed, doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes work, and I think we're moving things along very well. Thank you.
Oh, boy.
Pam?
What's that?
Because
they
Nancy's
have a
awesome.
Great job. Oh,
I just want to say that I think this, with the amount of people that were in town over the holiday weekend, I mean, it was massive, and the city workers did an excellent job keeping everything cleaned up, and, I mean, they went above and beyond. Everything was great.
Raj?
Oh, no, I'd just like to thank the boys and Nancy for doing a good job. And I think we do have a plate full coming up. So, yeah, looking forward. That's all I got.
Thank you again for all your hard work.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay?
And thank you for everyone to show up.
Uh-huh.
And with that, take a motion for adjournment.
Make a
I'll
motion.
make a motion to adjourn.
Raj, second.
I'll second.
Shelley. Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.